Top TV, truth of the people.
All right, we're just in time for Fact Check live on Top TV Kenya. My name is Abel Nikanero Masete, and we are coming to you live from the Biblical area. And today we are privileged to host a presidential hopeful come 2022, Bwana Ruben Kigame, who will be speaking to us on what his agenda is on the people of Kenya, and also his plan to tackle the conundrums facing Kenya and Kenyans at large. You can engage us on our social media platforms at Top TV Kenya, at Abel Nikanero Masete, and of course, your feedback will be valued. And straight into it, Mr. Kigame, karibu sana on Top TV.
I am very, very glad to be on Top TV.
Such a honor to have you here.
The honor is mine.
Have you been keeping with COVID?
Well, I do observe the protocols, and I do, do everything that is in my power to avoid infection. I wear my mask and keep social distance. I'm very glad that you are keeping social distance.
Yeah, of course, that's the agenda as we tackle this COVID-19 pandemic. And just to get us straight into it, many people know Ruben Kigame as a gospel artist, as a teacher, as a preacher, as well as a journalist like me. But who exactly is Ruben Kigame?
Well, you just preempted. I do wear those many hats. Yeah. I've been recording music since 1987. That's when I recorded my first album. And as of 2019, I had done about 29 albums. I'm working on another one. So I have to sort of remember what it is I'm doing. I'm also a trained teacher, yes, out of Kenyatta University with a B.Ed in history, philosophy and religious studies. At Moi University, I got an MSc in journalism and media studies, and currently I'm doing my PhD at the Africa International University, where I also teach part-time. I've taught before at Mary Hill High School, Madeira High School, and so I love teaching.
One may ask, why politics? Why?
No. So those are only two aspects. So there is the teaching, there is the journalism. Yeah. I'm also a very, involved social activist. That's the one aspect a lot of people don't know. Right from my student days, I've been very interested in multi-party democracies, and I attended those meetings that were pushing for the repealing of Section 2A, and into the constitutional process of 2005, and I did some civic education for the Western and Rift Valley regions. And 2010, of course, I was involved with the church in terms of making the 2010 Constitution content aware. I've read the entire document. And in 2013, I actually did run for office in Vihiga County, wanted to be its first governor. And recently, maybe this is significant, people need to know I am one of the convener members of the Linda Katiba initiative. So social activism.
Okay.
Yes.
And recently, Mr. Kigame, in Kenya, we have seen that the political temperature has been rising day by day. And we have seen a number of politicians traversing the Mount Kenya region. Yeah. But we have not seen a lot from Ruben Kigame. What are you up to? What are you doing in line to popularize your bid ahead of the 2022 elections?
Well, two quick things about the Mount Kenya visits. One is that the fact that everybody is trooping to Mount Kenya does not mean we are not trooping elsewhere. So we are moving around the country, yes. And my team and I have been in a number of places. I think if you followed, the latest one was in Meru, the Maua region. But my style, this is what is so significant about my way of campaigning. The noise will come later, but I've been on the ground meeting different groups, musicians and, persons living with disability, the women, and so on, professionals. So the point is, talk to people where they are. If you run around with a truck and make all the noises or attend a church service and get media coverage, it doesn't mean you've got the votes.
Let's face this, Mr. Kigame. When you look at the politics in our country, they have been arranged in such a manner that Kenyans usually vote in a tribal line. Yes. What do you make of that as you popularize your bid? Do you think it will affect you?
First of all, that's the way not to do politics, because you cannot balkanize and polarize people along tribes and then expect national unity. In fact, once you have this as your bargaining chip, you begin to lose on your status as a national leader. Because Kenya is made of about 44 different communities. And sometimes we look at the numbers of particular communities and imagine that it is they that should shape the way the politics of Kenya should go. That is exactly why we have a problem, because then you end up with leaders from only the big communities. But a Ruben Kigame presidency sets out to undo all of that, whereby right from the naming of my deputy and to the CSs and people in government, we want a national face. And it begins with campaigning, by the way, Omasete. It begins with campaigning because if you promise someone a position during the campaign period, so they give you money, you promise them a position, then you're obliged to give them that position. That's how corruption sets in. So right from the start, I've refused those kinds of deals, you know, financial deals, because we want to run clean, because one of the things we really must bring to an end is corruption. And my competitors, face it, are not capable of facing corruption head on. Because of all these deals. You know, we are a deal country. And the reason why we are where we are is that people make bad deals and, you know, make mistakes, but we don't want to tell them it's mistakes.
Speaking about the running mate position, will you also be picking a running mate from Mount Kenya? It seems like the region is on the cutting end because a number of politicians have been visiting that place frequently.
So, sir, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. We need to form a government that has a national face. And I need to clarify something. National face does not mean that we cannot pick somebody from Mount Kenya. The issue is, how do we distribute responsibilities and leadership in such a way that every region is represented? And it's not just about winning an election, it's about forming an inclusive government. So when you look at the running mate issue, this is not a Kigame thing, by the way, because by the way, who has said that you know, another coalition cannot come to be? So we are certainly talking, and that kind of decision is made within a group status. But that, I can tell you for free, the face of what you are going to see with a Kigame presidency is something radically different from what you have ever seen before.
Okay, let's tackle these problems one by one. The amount of debt that Kenya owes to countries like China and also other countries is almost hitting 9 trillion, if not 10 trillion.
It's 7.6.
7.6, I beg your pardon. If elected president, what will be your agenda on how, first of all, let me ask you, do you think, is it better to have higher taxes or borrow a lot of money from outside?
So those are two questions in one. So let's deal with the debt issue first. The reason why we have a debt crisis is because we have leaders who prefer development that is based on acquiring, you know, foreign funding and investment, and doing deals with countries in such a way that instead of Kenya gaining, Kenya loses. Another aspect is that the government itself ends up borrowing from local sources, from the local banks. So the Mwananchi is left without capital. Now, so to deal with this, first of all, you have to ask the question, what are our priorities as a country? Because we are investing in wrong priorities. So the first place to stop when dealing with debt is stop every irrelevant project that is not people-centered, that is not going to improve the lives of people. For example, if you put roads before food, you've got wrong priorities. If you put all these huge infrastructure programs before health, you have the wrong priority. So we have to reprioritize in order to deal with debt. But two, we need to stop the hemorrhage. We are losing, according to the president's own admission, 2 billion shillings per day. So we have to stop financial bleeding so that we have enough. For example, if you stop financial bleeding, you could save up to 720 billion just in 1 year. Now, so in order to deal with debt, we may need to reschedule and renegotiate some of it, you know, renegotiate even up to cancellation issues, and then stop the government from borrowing from the local bank so that Mwananchi has the capital. So the second question is taxation, and that taxation simply works like this. If people pay taxes and see where their taxes are going, they are motivated to pay taxes. But if you live in a society where those who have a lot of money evade tax, and then it's the common Mwananchi that pays through the nose and keep raising those taxes, then you actually work against your own resource incomes, because people get wary of paying taxes. So once you clean up corruption and all this impunity, then the taxes do what they are meant for. People will pay taxes, and then make sure that nobody evades paying taxes. We'll have enough money to pay off our debts, but at the same time, leave enough for development programs. Now, let me tell you one critical thing. We teach our children, we talk with one another about living within our means. The truth is, Kenya is the only place where you raise something like 1.8 trillion, and then you make a budget of 3.62 trillion. You are not living within your means. So we need to cut back on some of our greed and irrelevant planning so that we live within.
And before we leave that topic about taxes and borrowing, what is your comment about the 16% VAT that was imposed on petroleum products? You see, Kenyans are really complaining because it had ripple effects on other products.
Okay, two quick comments on that. First of all, the reason why we have a problem with petroleum hikes and so on is not even the Energy Regulatory Authority, really. That is the problem. The problem is our members of parliament. So parliament receives all these things, it passes all of them, and then begins to play victim. Like, but they are the ones who passed.
But let's face it, Bwana Kigame, they answer to what their leaders, their party leaders tell them to do. Because, I mean, if the ODM party leader or the Jubilee party leader says you guys vote like in this party, and they will do so because...
But that's why I'm saying we don't want those kind of leaders. Because if you are a stooge to the executive, if you are under state capture, where you don't think, you don't look at the Mwananchi that sent you there in parliament to represent them, then you'll be making, individualized decisions after your party leader, which is the wrong way to do legislation. But if you're talking about the issue of bringing down VAT and so on, it's not something you go into office and you say, tomorrow we bring VAT down. According to my economic advisors, the thing is, even within 5 years, we could certainly bring down VAT to maybe 14 or 13%. But that is not the issue. The issue is simplify the taxation system so that Mwananchi knows what they're paying for. Don't give a tax here and then take it away in another place. You see, it's too complicated the way we do taxation.
We are speaking to Ruben Kigame live from the Biblical area, and of course you can send in your feedback at Abel Omasete using the hashtag FactCheck, and also you can use the hashtag AskRubenKigame, and we will be sampling your views as the show goes on. Before we take a break, Bwana Kigame, I want us to touch a little bit on matters to do with education in our country. Okay. Recently, I think we now have 3 curriculums since independence, from the 743 system to 844, and now we have CBC. Yeah. From where you sit, what is your take about this whole CBC thing?
Two things. One is that the problem is that with Kenya's way of planning is that you actually budget for corruption. You see, if you introduce a new system, you end up throwing the country into a spin, and it's a socio-economic spin. So what CBC has done is really pushed the country to a particular direction without telling the country what was wrong with the 844, for example. So if you just wanted a more practical education, then the question I'm asking is, why not just make 844 more practical? You get it? So that's one unanswered question. That's the same thing we complained about the 7423 system, that we wanted 844 because it would be more practical. So how do we just all of a sudden say, our children are not getting practical education enough, let's come up with a new system? A new system is expensive,
but even speaking about
but
the practical aspect,
yes?
In the 844 system, we had subjects like art and craft, home science, life skills. I mean, don't you think they were kind of a little bit of practical as compared to what
But
CBC
that's exactly what I'm saying. Why didn't we implement that to the full, to the fullest level. And whatever it is we want that is more practical in CBC, why not incorporate? You see, incorporation is cheaper, simpler, more predictable than overhauling and starting afresh. Somebody said, before you pull down a fence, find out why it was put there in the first place. So teachers have been left out. The parents have been left out in terms of consultation. And you hear a CS of education like Magoha come and say, you know, this thing is here to stay. So that you are basically pushing it down people's throats. The issue is we need a national dialogue on CBC. That's the point. It's not like it's a bad thing, but how do you tell me as a parent tomorrow, instead of buying maybe the 7 or 8 books, now you're going to buy 14 books. Instead of paying this, you're going to pay that. You're going to do homework with your child from today. What about those who have no parents? Those who have no capacity to do homework with their children? This thing is nonsensical.
Mr. Kigame,
Yes.
for more than 3-4 decades, Kenya has been grappling in relation to education, things to do with classroom. There is a shortage of resources, books and desks. As elected president, what is your plan? I mean, 3 administrations in place, but so far we are still complaining. So
on
we don't have
education,
enough desks and books.
On education, before you get to infrastructure and desks and so on, the first place to stop is, are we able to get every school-going child to go to school? Because we live as if we do not have school dropouts every 8 years, you know, at the 8th year and the 12th year. We must stop this culture of punishing our youth by making them school dropouts. First of all, because of a simple exam, and 2, because of school fees. Every time I get this this invitation, you know, my child has done well, he can't manage school. The first thing is just make the government pay for education. That is not rocket science. With 10 to 15 days of tax collection, you can get every child to school in Kenya throughout the year. So my government would be working on ensuring that we have free education. What happens when you have free education? Then the money the parents are supposed to pay school fees end up being an investment platform for them to be able to make up their living. Then you eliminate parents, selling their lands, selling cows, and so on in order to take children to school. It's a government's responsibility to educate every child, no matter the background, no matter the economic status. So that's important. We shouldn't punish our youth by throwing them out of school. And then secondly, there are people that we keep on forgetting. We call them street children. We call them, chokora, whatever. Chokora. Those children must be rehabilitated, either put back to their homes or given a special home. So we have to defend the youth that way, and then deal with the things that drop children out of school. For example, drugs and alcohol. So rehab centers and so on. So for me, in terms of education, it's not just that every child goes to school. You have to go to the next step where you say, are they getting quality education?
Of course.
So we need more teachers. We have a lot of teachers we need to hire, and I'm wondering why we're not hiring them.
Of course.
So by the time you get to the building of classrooms and so on, that is the infrastructure thing. I'm hoping that we can have a partnership between the national and the county governments to make sure that that happens.
Yeah, my director is telling me to take a break. Remember, this is Fact Check live on Top TV Kenya. With me in studio is Mr. Ruben Kigame, a presidential hopeful come 2022. See you on the other side of this break.
Top TV, truth of the people.
All right, welcome back. This is Fact Check. With me in studio is Ruben Kigame, who is a presidential hopeful, and we are speaking to him. Rather, he's telling us on how his plans will be to tackle the conundrums facing Kenya and Kenyans at large. Bwana Kigame, I want us to talk about on matters to do with food security. And I want to give you a practical example of the Galana Kulalu project. That was an initiative by the Jubilee government in 2013. Now, when you look at the financial years from 2013 to 2020, 2013-2014, the project Galana Kulalu was awarded 4.5 billion Kenya shillings. 2014-2015, 3.5 billion. 2015-2016, 3.5 billion again. 2016-2017, 3.2 billion. 2017-2018, 600 million. 2018-2019, 8.5 billion. And recently, 2019-2020, 10 million. Yes. That is a lot of money. And
It's a
and
lot of money, but there is no formula.
Of course.
There is no prediction as to why, you have 3.5 billion and in another year you have 600 million.
Yeah, the project was to take on almost, I think, a million acre in Taita Taveta County, but that has not yet been accomplished. If elected president, what is your plan? What is your agenda? I mean, people in Laikipia, Samburu, Turkana, up to date are still complaining of hunger issues, hunger issues. I mean, what will you do? How will you deal with such kind of...
So there are about 4 things I would do. First of all, the whole question of agricultural success depends on availability of water. And so one of the reasons we keep saying that the semi-arid areas are food insecure is because they really don't have water. Because if they did, their livestock and so on would be okay. Some of them would be able to even grow some seasonal crops and so on. But that is only one aspect, investing in water drilling and all of that, so that people can have life. You see, without water there is no life. So that's the first place to start. The second thing to do is to ensure that we redo our whole system of how we do food distribution. One of the reasons why hunger is perennial in Kenya is because we have food not reaching the people that need the food. So some of it rots in the farms. Some of it has no storage capacity. Some of it is just we don't have roads to move it from one place to another. Why is it that cabbages would be fed to cattle in Nyandarua? I don't get it. Why is it that mangoes would rot in Marakwet? So these kinds of things need to be addressed. The other is really to eliminate corruption, because the reason for the failure of the Kulalo Galana project is that you imagine if you throw money at problems, the money will solve problems. The issue is there was bad planning, there was lack of accountability. Why we had, I think, less than 10,000 acres of piloting done is a question that media has been highlighting all over again and again. So we need to go back to undoing corruption, and I hope we really talk about the corruption thing.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
Now, the other thing is to ensure then that you stop the cartels that kill the efforts of the farmers. So that, for example, there is no point for farmers in Wasingishu being told, stop growing maize and start growing avocados. It makes no sense, because we've not been food secure yet. So the best thing would be to give those farmers farm implements, make sure that they have fertilizers, make sure that you buy their produce at the correct price, and eliminate those people who come and drop those prices in order to then import. But so you stop the importation.
Just to ask, how are you going to deal with these cartels? I mean, they're in NCPB. I believe you're a maize farmer, and the whole Ulabalu in NCPB, and also in KTDA.
Okay, I'm not a maize farmer, but so this is the thing. The thing is, it starts with a government, appointing a government that is based on what we call meritocracy, that you appoint the correct people to the correct position. You don't take, for example, a medical doctor and put him as CS in education. That should never be. So you get a farmer to be in charge of farming or agriculture. You get it? So that the decisions that are made professionally, but that they're also made by somebody who understands the farmers and what they need. The second thing is you ensure that in terms of transmission to the farmer, in terms of payment, that you eliminate as many in-betweens as possible, because the coffee, the tea, the sugar, the maize sectors are affected by people who come and fleece the farmers and then make profits that are just undesirable. So you eliminate the cartels by one, putting up maybe a digitized system of payment or monitoring all the agricultural produce, and or you persuade, you open up the economy in such a way that all these people, the in-betweens, can get engaged in some other way. And so we are looking at a scenario where the question should be, how much are we giving to the citizen, to the farmer, instead of how much are we producing this year? So when somebody comes and says you cannot sell potatoes that are more than 50 kilograms, let's say, have you consulted the farmers? You see, that participation is so important. Before you take any decision, talk to the people. We should have a people-centered government, and it's the same with youth. You can't sit in Nairobi and, at a boardroom decide this is what the youth want.
You have to face the ground.
Yes, call them, sit with them, ask them. This is what we want to do. What do you think? How should we go about this? What are your priorities?
Enough said on matters to do with food security. Let's get to matters to do with land. For decades now, land issue has been a problem in Kenya. As the President of the Republic of Kenya, Mr. Reuben Kigame, how are you going to deal with this issue? Keeping in mind there was a commission called the National Land Commission that came in relation to the 2010 Constitution, and it's almost how many years? 7, 8, 9 years. Do you think it has performed at its level best to say the land issues in Kenya have been solved to some extent? You can say it has tried, or what is your take on that?
Being a president is not as simple as you imagine. You have to balance a lot of things. And one of those things we have to balance is, what does the Constitution say regarding, land and historical injustices that affect land? Our Constitution is still a bit vague on some of those things. And that is the chapter on land is one of those chapters that need a review. And secondly, we need legislation that determines how much land every Kenyan can own. Because that's one thing we're running away from, that we need to settle, because there's no way you can have some people owning millions of acres and some people owning actually zero. And that is one thing. But then we have to move away from imagining that the only way to define property is land. There are other ways to define property and ownership. So we need to move away from imagining that you are wealthy if you have maybe 1,000 acres. We need to communalize certain things. We need to take certain decisions on land that allow us to produce more. Maybe in an area, say we will zone off this area to grow this particular crop, and another one to grow a different crop. So in terms of land injustices, I think we need a national dialogue that says, what, there are people that own too much land in this country. Can we have a discussion or some kind of moratorium that allows that question to be reviewed? And I think the Ndungu report and all, the National Land Commission recommendations are things we need to bring to the table.
And even up to date, there are political elites who come to a place and say they want to take this land because in the name of community development. I mean,
that's why I'm saying the Constitution is vague, because when you talk about, community land and you talk a lot about public land and so on, that's why you have problems, for example, in Laikipia. When you have all these conservancies and so on, and you are doing conservancies in a place where you have pastoral cultures, people who feed their flocks by allowing them to graze, then you treat them as trespassers because they did what is naturally, a community practice. So we need to come to the point where even before you buy land in a particular area and fence it off and so on, maybe there needs to be community participation. So you can't go in an area and say to someone in Samburu or Pokot that you cannot graze your land here, when that has been done for 300 or 400 years.
And you have been largely waiting for this topic, things to do with corruption. I mean, from Goldenberg to Eurobond to Anglo leasing, Aurora and Kimorere Dam scandal, and recently came, so even the president is on record admitting that 2 billion Kenya shillings is being stolen every day. As the head of state, as the commander-in-chief, what is your plan? What is your plan?
So before tackling the head of state position, I need to speak to every citizen of Kenya and just say this. Let's be realistic. If someone has been in government before and has not fixed the corruption issue, has not slain that dragon of corruption, if they promise you that they're going to do anything, I don't think we can trust them. So we need a fresh start. We need a fresh look. But that comes with citizens answering the next question. Who is the right president and who are the right leaders that can lead this country? I put it in one word: people of integrity. We need leaders of integrity that have not been caught in scandals to lead this country. And one of the reasons why I'm offering myself for a fresh start is, I ask, like Jesus did once, who of you have I swindled? Samuel asked that in the Bible as well. Whose land have I taken? Whose property have I taken? Who is it that I have swindled and cheated because of anything that is called corruption? Now, if you can find such people, and there are many, then these are the people you should give an opportunity to lead you. Now, the second thing is, once I'm in office, the first day of being in office begins with asking the question, what have the courts determined or found out regarding the corruption cases? If the courts have recommended prosecution, we want people prosecuted. If there is lack of evidence, we want those cases re-examined and terminated. We will give what we call amnesty, a period for people who are named or have been implicated to be able to make right. Now, if they don't, then I hope nobody will ever blame me for being the first president, in fact, to jail some big fish as well. Because when it comes to the law, it seems as if those who are in office or in positions of power never face justice. So they seem to be above the law. And I want to see a country as a president that is equal for everybody, with everyone. If you make a mistake as a common person or someone in government, including myself, that the law takes its course.
And who do you think is the weakest link in the fight against corruption? I mean, the judiciary usually issue their summons, injunctions to the political elites, but we have seen them live on TV. They've been disobeying them. They have not been attending to court summons.
That is the best question you've asked today. Who is the main problem when it comes to corruption? Do you know who it is?
Who it is?
It's you and me.
How?
Because one, we are the ones who elect these people. We can't pretend we don't know who we elect. If we elected people we don't know, that would still be a problem. So we need to check. Has this person ever stolen? Has this person ever, watu wamemulia siku moja? Kama watu wamekulia, ama wanakulaumu wanakusema chini chini umechukua kitu cha mtu. There's no point electing such a person. So the problem begins with you and me. Next is the problem of the courts. Once the courts do not, move quickly enough on the cases of corruption and graft in general, then justice is miscarried. We look to them. Now, the problem is that the executive has discovered that's the way to do, just muzzle and cripple the courts so that the issues drag, or that some judges can be bribed in the end. The issue is we need to fund the courts properly. And one of the criticisms I have against the Jubilee government is that they have been defunding the court systems systematically. So much so that they don't give them enough money to expand, to expedite cases, and then sometimes refusing to appoint judges, and so on. So I want to go on record by saying I want to be a friend of the courts.
And what if your plan in the fight against to curb corruption activities in the country fails? Do you think capital punishment should be introduced in Kenya?
Well, the thing is, let's follow the Constitution. Yeah, I cannot impose my own, what does the Constitution say about capital punishment? So that is one. The other thing is, I do not have room as a presidential candidate, or hopeful as you call me, for being defeated by the issue of corruption, because that's going to be my number one agenda. If I cannot give anything to Kenyans as a presidential candidate, then at least let me fight corruption and impunity and build a government of national unity, and the rest can take care of itself. That is going to be my main focus, to slay the dragon of corruption and impunity from day one in office. In fact, from the campaign period. I do not want any corruption being done during my campaign period.
Okay, I get your point. Let's shift gears altogether and speak to matters to do with the healthcare. Kenya is still grappling with the issue of congestion in public hospitals more so Kenyatta Hospital. What is your plan to deal with such issue that has been there for a very long time?
Well, that is not complicated. If the hospitals are filled up, or people are sharing beds and some sleeping on the floor and so on, the answer is build more hospitals, expand existing ones, buy more beds, and so on. Because it's indignifying for me to go to a hospital with a particular ailment and then I share a bed with somebody suffering from something else, then I catch it, I become much worse. So this is not rocket science. We need to build more hospitals in the counties. Not every hospital should be in Nairobi. So we need to particularly focus on those areas that do not have hospitals and health centers, elevate some of the hospitals to higher status and more capacity. What is the point of having hospitals without health workers? So we need to hire more health workers. We need to train more doctors and even hire those who exist. One of my commitments would be to work with the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, SRC, to ensure that doctors, for example, and health workers in general, don't have to go on strike, to ask for salary increment. Let's take care of them. There are two main groups of people that I would like to see particularly paid better, and that is health workers and teachers. Without teachers, we have nothing. We have no profession, nothing. Without health workers, we have no country. So we must pay our health workers well, we must pay our teachers well. And we must hire those that are trained and are not operational so that they can take care of our citizens. But let me tell you something that nobody will tell you. We focus on the wrong priority when it comes to health services in this country. Instead of handling treatment, we should actually spend more money and energies in prevention. So if we prevent people, for example, from contracting waterborne diseases or airborne diseases, for example, deal with mosquitoes and so on, then we'd minimize malaria. So let's deal with more prevention in my government than treatment.
Speaking of the doctor-patient ratio, do you think administration will be the game changer in that people now stop going to India and prefer
they may not stop going to India because we may need certain specialized services, or when there are more cases than we can handle. But I want this to go on record that I will for sure expand access to healthcare. And my emphasis is take healthcare where the people are, so that nobody has to come to Kenyatta Hospital for something that can be taken care of in Amagoro or in Kwale or in Garissa. There is no way my government will watch, people in Marsabit and so on crossing to go into Ethiopia for medical treatment when we can, build the capacity for the hospitals and health services in the Garissa area and Marsabit area, so that there is services accessible to the people. Yes.
In 2 minutes, speak to us on matters to do with export labor, in that Kenya, we know very well, it is a country that is rich in skills, but because of no opportunities or few opportunities, citizens are forced to travel abroad in areas like Saudi Arabia or any other country, so that they can put their skills into practice, so that they can earn some money. But in courtesy of doing so, we see cases of abuse. Especially in areas like in the Middle East. And I saw your post on Facebook commenting on how you're going to tackle that issue. Talk to us live on Fact Check. How are you going to curb such issues, especially in the Middle East?
So the first thing is to prevent export of our human resources. Make sure there are opportunities locally. The only reason why Kenyans go to the Middle East or Europe or America to look for jobs is because we have made it difficult for them to get jobs locally. So we must expand the job opportunities, and it's just that time fails me to show you how we will do that. Secondly, we need to pay our workers better, because there is no way a nurse who is trained will fail to take up a job in Namibia or Europe when Europe or Namibia will pay 3 times what we, and we're not saying that everybody will therefore be paid 3 times, but let's make terms of employment so conducive that people can pay their rent, people can have food, people can have something to have for leisure, the fundamental rights for survival and existence. So my government would be keen on ensuring that, one, we prevent unnecessary migration for job purposes. But 2, should anyone migrate and go and look for a job elsewhere, then we want to ensure that we are responsible for the presence of those citizens of Kenya in other countries. So we work with the high commissioners and embassies in those countries, but my eyes will be extremely open to see which agencies qualify, which agencies are meeting the standards for being able to interview, prepare, and take our citizens overseas. They must be accountable. I don't want to see Kenyans coming back in coffins or abuses being put on our citizens and the government is sitting there mum. I would go crazy to hear one of my citizens is being harassed, or abused, or beaten up or raped. I would go berserk. So once I become president, every mzee, every mama, every youth, and listen to this, even every unborn child, that's my citizen, I have to defend them like I'm defending my own life.
Yes. Your point is and as we wind up, I want us to talk more about the youth. A number of youth in Kenya are unemployed. They have gone to school, finished, graduated, but they have no jobs. I mean, as Ruben Kigame, why will you convince a youth back at home to go and register as, I think registration is ongoing as we speak right now, to go and register as an eligible voter in Kenya and vote for Ruben Kigame? I mean, why should they do that?
Yeah, so 3 things for the youth. One is that I believe I'm the only candidate that has not just been living with, walking with, but also talking to a lot of youth. I don't know any part of this country that I have not been to in terms of high school and college and just sat down and listened to the different issues the youth have. So I have this confidence that I understand the youth, not only because I've raised youth of my own and many others that are not my own children, but also because I listen to them, like every month I'm traveling to listen to youth. But 2, I also have an idea of the abilities the youth carry, whether it's about sports or music or film or carving or basketry. All of these, I live with them, I encourage them, I empower youth, so I'm able to give guidance in such a way that these skills end up paying. Because the reason why a lot of youth give up is they do, for example, you do all this music and then the middlemen take all your royalties, or you put up a film and nobody wants to promote it.
They vote for you?
Exactly, because I understand them and I'm going to defend, for example, county incubation centers, talent centers, and so on for the youth. But I'm also going to ensure that every graduate that is starting a business or some kind of investment will have the capacity to have seed capital, because seed capital is just that you avail capital for them to be able to move. For example, you want to start an IT center. So we give you the capital, but then give you enough time to repay and make sure that the interests are low. So that if I gave you 6 to 7 years to pay, surely your business can stand. And then, so I'm able to feel the youth. But there's something I must say. Things about those who are caught up, let's say, in drugs or alcohol or some other vices, gambling and so on, and so mental depression. I want to be a friend of the youth. And I want rehab centers. I want, correction centers. And mark this, I want every Kenyan citizen off the street. I don't want any so-called street family or street. We must absorb them. They are our children. They are our business. Yes.
Bwana Ruben Kigame, asante sana. Nashukuru kwa kujitolea kupata nafasi kuongea na vijana Top TV.
And I hope utanivotea. Naomba hivyo na kuomba kwa unyenyekevu.
Vijana amekusikiza. And by the way, before I went up, which political party are you using and who is your eligible running mate?
Okay, for the running mate, I'm yet to unveil, and we are actually discussing that. Right now, for political party, I'm under Ukweli Party.
Of course, that has been Mr. Ruben Kigame speaking to us live on Fact Check. This is Top TV. Remember, it's all about politics, policies, and governance, where we tell you what is good, what is right, and we reveal the hidden. My name is Abel Nicanor Omasete. See you soon.